Hi, everyone. Welcome to Understanding Fats. I am Andrea Dahlman, and today I'm going to be walking you through understanding healthy fats. And I think this is an important topic because there's a lot of information out there that we don't know what we should understand or how we should believe or what's true, what's not true. And so I just want to put down some facts today and kind of help you navigate the macronutrient of fat. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Andrea Dahlman. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm also a restorative wellness practitioner, and I specialize in digestive conditions and IBS. And understanding what fats we should be consuming or avoiding is really important and paramount to our health. The first thing that I want to get really super clear is that eating fat does not actually make you fat. We have been told that for years, and it's absolutely not true. So what do we need healthy fats for? Healthy fats are needed for long, sustained energy. Fats are like a log to our fire, so they have the longest burn. Whereas carbs are more like a kindling. So if I think about a metabolic fire and I have the fat, which is our large log, and then I have the medium-sized logs, which I say are protein, and then the sticks and kindling, that's the carbohydrates. So the carbs start the fire, and the protein then burns, and then the fat, and that fat is our longest burning fuel. You do not need to eat a lot of fat to have that, but it just is that fat, because it's more calorie dense, allows for a longer energy burn in the body. We need healthy fats for building and repairing hormones. Super important for our hormonal health is to be eating healthy fats. Our cell membranes, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute here, and healthy brain function. Our brain needs these fats. The heart prefers our omega-3 fats, and we need healthy fats for muscle function. We've been eating fats for energy for thousands of years, but not these kinds of fats. So the fats that are over here in this picture, these are not the fats that we've been consuming. We want to remove these fake fats, and because they are an obstacle to our optimal health. We have 3 macronutrients to choose from: proteins, carbs, and fats. And the moment we take fat out is when we start to increase the sugar, because the palatability goes down. Now, pastured animals are a really great source of healthy fats, and they have the ideal balance of the omega-3s and omega-6s. And a little bit later on in this talk, I'm going to talk about those. But you're going to support local farming, kinder animal treatment. Animals eat their natured food environmentally. So when we choose, if you're going to be a person who consumes an animal product, you really want to choose the cleanest source possible, and pastured animals are the way to go, and humanely raised. Conventional meat, when we're choosing conventional meat as a source of our healthy fats, we would not want to choose this, because their fats in conventional meat have more toxins associated with them. And why is that? Because they're fed corn and soy products, and they are also are vaccinated, and so all of those toxins get stored in their fat. And just like we store our toxins in our fat, the animals do too. So if we eat a conventional meat that's been conventionally raised in a feedlot, then we're going to be taking on more of those toxins. They are higher in omega-6 to omega-3, and we really want omega-3 to be higher than omega-6. Again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And that omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. And we do need omega-6s because there are times that we need that inflammatory action, but it raises inflammation if we're eating that conventional meat. If eating conventional meat, like it's just not possible for you to find pasture-raised meat, or you're not in a budget place where you can do that, then choose the leanest fat meat possible if you're going to eat conventionally. Never eat conventional organ meat. So those would be things like chicken livers or beef liver. If you're going to choose those, step up and buy the organic, because those organs are detoxification pathways, and again, they're going to harbor a lot more toxins from the animal. And currently, right now, 99% of meat consumption is from the conventional meat sources. So you have power with your dollar to make that look different, and you'll have a better quality of health as a result. There are three fat classifications. There is saturated fat, which we're going to talk about, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat. And we actually need a balance of all three for optimal health. Saturated fat, and we're going to talk about each one of these so we can kind of get just a cursory understanding of them. Saturated fat is best when it's heated, it's in its high heat cooking. So it's very stable. It doesn't go rancid easily. These are tropical fats like coconut oil, or animal fats like butter or ghee, which is clarified butter, lard, tallow, palm oil, duck fat. These are all saturated fats. And these saturated fats they molecularly look like this, where we have all the C's and the H's, the carbons and the hydrogen. And the reason that these are stable is that there's not a lot of space where oxygen can get in when it's being heated. And so that's why it stays so stable. It's nice and strong. So that's why we would choose these to cook at high heat, because of their structure. Now, a monounsaturated fat is relatively stable for cooking, but you can see in the picture here that there's a kink here. And when you have a little bit of a kink, or kind of like an elbow, that is a space where oxygen can get in, and it can cause rancidity. So we want to make sure that we're not cooking these at super high heats. They're good for like medium temperatures, so they don't go rancid easily. And they're the best fuel for the heart. The heart really likes monounsaturated fats. And how you can tell the difference between a saturated fat and a monounsaturated fat is that the saturated fat is solid at room temperature, and the monounsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature. And examples of this would be olive oil, avocados, macadamia nut oil, extra virgin olive oil, hazelnut oil, almond oil, pecan oil. These are all different examples of that. So polyunsaturated fats, these should not be used in cooking. They're quite unstable. They go rancid fairly quickly. They're always liquid. We never want to use these when we're cooking. And we should always store them in the refrigerator. And examples of this would be things like fish oil, sesame seed oil, hemp oil, pumpkin oil, and flaxseed oil. And you can see in the picture at the top here, there are many kinks in this, and that when we cook allows for more oxygen to get into those spaces, and that's what can cause it's fragile. And so we don't want to have that heat applied to that, because it can cause something called AGEs, and that will cause damage into your body. So we want to avoid using these in cooking. We would never want to use these in cooking. And these are things that we would want to be using cold. So if you're someone who really loves sesame seed oil, well, great, put it into a dressing, but don't ever cook with it. Now, oils and fats to avoid are things like, and some of these aren't even really real. So margarine, we don't want. Smart Balance, these buttery spreads. You guys can read the list here. Sunflower oil, peanut oil. These are things that we want to avoid using in our day-to-day. And we really want to make sure we're choosing those healthier fats that we just talked about in each one of the categories. So, and we want to be consuming some from each. So when you go to choose an oil, you're probably wondering, what does all of that processing language, because the marketers really have done a number on us, and we get confused when we get up there and we're like, okay, well, how do I know if, what's the difference between expeller pressed and unrefined? And so here's just a little verbiage around that. Expeller pressed is forced extracting oils instead of heat or chemicals. And this is really the preferred choice. So if you find an expeller pressed like olive oil, that would be preferred. Cold pressed is a combination of low heat, no more than 80 degrees, and then they grind it. So that would probably be my second choice. Cold processed means that it hasn't passed through any heat. Unrefined is less processed, potentially has more flavor and higher quality, but can go rancid more easily because it's not refined. So there's nothing been done to it. And then solvent extracted, this is where they actually use a chemical to extract and they use a really high temperature. And this, you won't find this on the label, but if it doesn't say expeller press, cold press, or cold processed, you can probably guess that it's solvent extracted. Now, if you're going to purchase an oil, and especially one like an olive oil, you want to buy your oil that's in dark glass, never clear, because the light affects it. And we would want to try to choose no plastic if possible. But like these bottom ones here, where it's hazelnut, grapeseed, and walnut oil, they're in these tins. That's better. And I'd say also don't buy the giant bottle of olive oil unless you're going to be able to go through it pretty quickly. Smaller is better because oils are more fragile, and you don't want to have, you're like, have it and you're like, oh, I've had this for 3 years. It's like, that's not good. You want to be able to turn that over in 90 days or at the very longest 6 months. You shouldn't have those oils in your pantry for too long. So don't buy giant jars of them unless you know you can move through them. So symptoms of lack of fats in your diet, which this is interesting because people would never say, oh, well, I must have low fat diet, and and this is why I'm feeling this way, is because I'm not eating enough fats. But these are actual things that can happen if you're not consuming enough healthy fats, and that's too high or too low body weight, because you will and you also will see an imbalance of insulin and cortisol as a result. Dry, scaly skin, hair loss, cold intolerance, bruising easily, poor wound healing, poor growth, lower resistance to infection. In severe cases, you can have loss of menstruation, and sometimes will present as allergies. Now, what exactly should fat be doing for us? So in the beginning, we talked about that fat is a long burning fuel. So one of the roles of fats is it's a slow burning source of energy for us. It increases satiation, slows down the absorption of food. It protects the lining for our organs and joints, and fat makes food taste good, like bacon. I love bacon. Now, some people might not like bacon, and that's fine, but I really enjoy a slice of bacon now and again. We need to be consuming healthy fats because in order for our fat soluble vitamins to be absorbed, we have to have healthy fats in our body. The formation and function of every hormone is dependent on the healthy fats in our diet. Healthy liver function, that's because it builds healthy cholesterol and bile. If we don't have that fat, we can't build that cholesterol, we can't build that bile. Manages inflammation. Excess fat contains toxin. It's a protective measure. So when we have fat and we have our fat cells, or where fat is stored, our toxins that are in our environment or in our food get wrapped up in fat to protect us. And it's the makeup of every cell membrane in our body. And I really want to spend a little bit of time on that because I think people don't really understand that, in order for us to have healthy cells, we have to have healthy fats. And here's a picture. So fat makes the cell membranes. It's the function of the body that begins at the cellular level. And here we have a picture of the extracellular, and then we have intercellular, and this is called the bilipid layer here. And all this is made from the fats that we consume. So the type of fat, damaged or not, your cell will use to create. So every one of your cells. So if you're eating healthy fats, then you're going to have healthy cells. If you're eating fats that are unhealthy, you're going to have unhealthy cells. Your body will still use the materials that it's available to it, but you potentially aren't going to have the most healthy of cells. Now, in this cell outline here, what our cell is made up is, it's made up of all three types of those fats. So it's made up of monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated fats. It needs all of them. And actually, in order for the cell to have structure, there's a little bit of cholesterol that gets built into this as well. And we really want to be consuming and eating quality fats so we can have quality cells. Eating damaged fats creates damaged cells and poor communication. These cells have to be able to talk to each other. And if you have, let's say there's a cell that has a different language because it's not a healthy fat, and then we have all these healthy fat cells, and it's like trying to communicate, but it can't because it's a poor communicator, those unhealthy fats. Every single one of your cells has this bilipid layer, all of them. Now, inflammation is part of the healing process, and a body has to first inflame before it can start the anti-inflammatory process. Now, you're probably thinking, what? That doesn't make sense. But if you think about it, like if you have a cut, you'll see around the cut like a red area. And that is the body inflaming to alert the immune system, come and heal this particular space. Now, it has to inflame to make the cell bigger so that the anti-inflammatory properties can get in to do the work. And the cell has to be able to open so that it can allow for that. So the anti-inflammation is also part of the process. So the cell has to open up, has to then allow for the anti-inflammatory in, and then it allows for the healing to begin. And these two functions have to be in balance. You have to have an inflammation process, and then you need your body to respond with an anti-inflammation response. Now, sugar, we're going to talk a little bit about cholesterol because it's one of those things that is greatly misunderstood as it relates to fats. Sugar, not fat, or cholesterol causes inflammation. Now, we don't want that type of inflammation, so we want the inflammation that is healthy and in balance with the anti-inflammatory processes. But when we consume excess sugar, it causes extra inflammation in the body. And what do all of these diseases have in common? Every single disease has one thing in common, and that is inflammation. Now, cholesterol, we have to have cholesterol. I just talked about how in the cell, that bilipid layer, in order for the cell to have structure, it has to have the cholesterol in there because it allows for it to have structure. So it's a makeup of our cell membranes. It actually plays a role in making our sex hormones. It makes bile. It's part of the bile, so we can digest fats. Now, bile is a product that the liver makes and is stored in the gallbladder so that we can break down our fats, but cholesterol plays a role in that. It creates and metabolizes vitamin D. When you go out in the sun and the sun touches your skin and you're going to make vitamin D, it's cholesterol that facilitates that particular mechanism in the body. It actually has an antidepressant component and it fights infection. Without cholesterol, these functions are low or non-existent. Now, cholesterols are like the firefighters that show up to a scene of the fire. So cholesterol really has a role of looking at the body and saying, is there a problem here? Do I need to put in the protective mode? So I liken it to if your house is on fire and you call the fire department and they show up with the ambulance and the fire truck, you don't blame them for the fire. The fire was already there. They're there to help you take care of the fire. And cholesterol has that same response in the body. Now, this might be news to some of you. You might be saying, no, wait just a second. I thought cholesterol was bad. No, cholesterol actually is a healing agent. It only is bad when it continues to be produced. But the question is not why cholesterol being bad. I guess that's not a question. It's not that cholesterol is bad. It's what's causing the inflammation that cholesterol has to keep showing up to respond to. So there's a picture of an artery here, and you can see the cholesterol starting to deposit. There's maybe some inflammation in this artery for some reason. Maybe this person overconsumes sugar. Maybe they have an autoimmune condition. Maybe they're more sedentary. I don't know, whatever it is. So the cholesterol comes and it puts these lipoproteins here. But if it continues to be inflamed, the cholesterol will then build on more and more. And eventually you'll get plaque forming. And then that's when we experience a problem with cholesterol. So build up a plaque that repairs the damaged tissue. This is a natural body response to be able to take care of inflammation. Plaque is made from cholesterol and it's seen as the enemy. It really shouldn't be. The question is, what is the source of the inflammation? When someone comes to me and they have high cholesterol, I am looking for is their body inflamed? What are they doing that's causing their body to try to make more of it, more cholesterol? Because the body makes 80% of the cholesterol in your cholesterol number. So dietary cholesterol, people get, oh, I have high cholesterol, so I'm going to start cutting out my cholesterol. That would be great, except for the dietary cholesterol only really accounts for about 20% of that. So changing your diet and reducing the amount of cholesterol that you have in your diet maybe could be helpful, but probably not a lot. The bigger thing is, what is causing the inflammation? Is there something in your diet that's causing the inflammation? Is it food allergies? Is it overconsumption of sugar? Is it that you're eating too many carbohydrates for your particular body and your bioindividuality? So we have to look at the total picture and not just blame cholesterol, because cholesterol actually has some good things that it does in the body, and it is about, helping keep us safe from inflammation. Now, the myth that fat makes you fat, that's one thing I started with, is it's really not. It's the sugar, it's refined carbohydrates, it's the trans fats, it's the hydrogenated fats. They make you fat. Why? Because that's what we were talking about earlier. They increase inflammation. When a body is inflamed, the goal always is to keep your body in the most homeostasis as it can. And homeostasis means perfect balance. So if your body is inflamed, the body says, okay, well, my priority is to go take care of that inflammation. What it doesn't have as a priority is to release weight. It's just the way it is. This is a problem. This is a stress. I got to take care of the stress. Weight gain is a byproduct of inflammation. So when somebody comes and they say, I have 20 pounds to lose, and then they have high cholesterol and their glucose is high, I see the picture that we have to adjust the diet. We have to make these changes to how you're eating, so that your body will stop going into this place of inflammation. And when we start to address that, that's when we start to see the weight come off by itself. When I get to help the client find their correct diet, it's beautiful, because the client doesn't have to work so hard to get the weight off, because the inflammation is coming down. So really, it's not the fat that makes you fat, it's inflammation that's keeping you stuck there. So the more you can do to reduce the inflammation in your diet, the better off you're going to be. How did we get here? Right? Like, what? It's so frustrating, because this is kind of a newer, like in the last 50 years kind of problem. And so it's like, what changed? Well, it goes back to what our food eats we're eating. Grain-fed beef tend to be higher in omega-6, and omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. And it's not that that's bad, but if that ratio gets off, it increases inflammation in the body. Studies right now are being done in the connection of grain-fed red meat and inflammation. So don't demonize red meat, because if you have a source to a pasture-raised, you buy a cow or half a cow, and that cow was out having a happy life and it was humanely raised, and it comes in and it's grass-fed, grass-finished, the omega-6s will be lower. But if you have a grain-fed 100% of your life cow, that's going to have a higher omega-6, and that's going to potentially translate to more inflammation for you. So if you eat conventional meat, talked about this at the beginning, leaner meat is ideal. Promotion of fish as heart healthy is on the rise, but you have to it's not just about, if you're going to choose fish, like farm versus wild, choose wild fish, because that's also going to have an effect on the amount of omega-3s or omega-6s that fish has, and that's going to influence the inflammation in your body. So don't eat farm-raised fish. They are fed with grains and soy, and that's just going to create more issues for you. You have to know what your foods are eating. What about vegetable oils? Andrea, I cook with canola oil. I thought it was good for me. That's what it says on the package. No, because this is one of those polyunsaturated fats that are heated and they become rancid, and they cause all kinds of oxidative stress in the body, and they produce those AGEs that I was talking about. So we want to avoid the vegetable oils. There are really no true vegetable oils. That's canola, corn, soy, all of them. They're polyunsaturated fats, but they will cause problems in the body. They are almost always refined, made from GMO, and they go rancid easily. They're industrial seed oils, so we want to avoid them. And pretty much all fried food, so French fries or anything, they almost always, unless you're like at a farm to table kind of restaurant, they're not using healthy fats for frying. How do we incorporate more like health with fat? These are some random tips. Just threw these in here. Oil pulling. Oil pulling is a way to detox the body, and that's where you take like a teaspoon of coconut oil and you swish it around in your mouth, and that helps pull, excuse me, pull the, excuse me, pull the toxins out of your body. But if you have silver fillings or extensive dental work, you want to avoid that. The maldigestion of fats or bad fats can clog the lymph and the liver, producing cellulite. So if you're choosing the bad fats or you're eating or consuming fast food, you're going to be consuming some of those bad fats, and that is going to cause more issues than it's worth. So avoid doing that. And eating poor quality fats will make you crave more fats because it's not going to satiate you the way a quality fat would. Let's talk about vitamin D, and let's actually talk about all the fat-soluble vitamins. So the fat-soluble vitamins are D, E, K, and A. We'll talk about each of them. But vitamin D specifically is more like a hormone than it is a vitamin. And so you really want to make sure that you're getting tested. It's hard to get tested now because the insurance companies have decided that it's too expensive. And they will charge you a lot of money now to have your vitamin D tested. And I would suggest if you can't get it tested, then contact me, because we potentially can do it for a lot less than if you have to pay out of pocket. But one thing I want to say about it is that the range for vitamin D, if you do get tested, is 30 to 100. And if your number is 31, your regular provider is probably going to be like, hey, your vitamin D is good. I'm going to say that somewhere between 50 and 60 is where people feel the best, and it's really supporting their overall health. And we get a benefit when our vitamin D is substantial or in that range, that we have bone and muscular health, we have cardiovascular health, we have brain health, we have cancer fighting immune supportive functions that are part of this, and optimal bone health. So a lot of people who are able to get it covered by insurance, they're the ones that have had osteopenia or osteoarthritis, or rheumatoid arthritis. They oftentimes will be able to get that tested by their medical provider, but everybody else, they're saying no to now. So the other thing about vitamin D, if you get 30 or lower, is it really affects mood and anxiety, depression. Low vitamin D can really have an effect on that. So it's important to supplement. But I want to say that a word of caution, like, don't just start throwing in vitamin D into your routine. Why? Because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, meaning the body stores it inside of you. And if you just start throwing it in, you can make yourself vitamin D toxic because you're just taking too much. So you want to get tested, know what your number is. Maybe you have a short stint of a high dose of vitamin D and then maintenance dose. That's the most ideal, but you got to know what your number is before you start throwing vitamin D down. Otherwise, you could cause more trouble than you're, really wanting to do. And you don't want to do that. You want to have vitamin D be super supported in the right way. Now, vitamin K is good as a blood coagulant. It completes the synthesis of certain proteins. It's supportive to the skin, brain, and prostate health, and supports calcium distribution. This is important. So When we take, when we take vitamin D, I like a vitamin D K2 liquid together. That's like my favorite. If I'm going to supplement somebody with vitamin D, I like to put it with a K2 liquid. That way I know that the vitamin D is going to get absorbed, and it helps with calcium distribution. So we don't have problems down the line of things are not getting put somewhere where they're not supposed to. So, but again, test, find out where your vitamin D is, and then supplement accordingly. The other two fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin E, which is good as an antioxidant, general reproductive health, and for gene expression. And vitamin A is for fetal development, reproductive health. This is really important for the mucous membranes, immunity in the urinary tract, eye health, and bone health as well. Now, what about the essential fatty acids? So essential fatty acids means that we can't get they can't be obtained from our diet, so we have to take them, or we can't make them, so we have to get them from our diet. And all three of the omega essential fatty acids need to be obtained from our diet, and they are called essential fatty acids. Omega-3s are best known for their heart health benefits. And today, the ratio for omega-3 to 6 is 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, but that's an imbalance associated with a lot of diseases. So we really want to get more omega-3s in, because omega-3 is our anti-inflammatory and omega-6 is our pro-inflammatory. And excessive pro-inflammatory compounds are linked to heart disease, arthritis, eczema, and even Alzheimer's. So what happens, how do you know if you're low in essential fatty acids? You'll be craving fatty or greasy foods. You'll have low or reduced fat in your diet. That can be from the past or even in the present. People who experience tension headaches at the base of their skull, if they gets headaches, if you have a headache when you're out in the hot sun, or you sunburn easily or suffer from sun poisoning, and if your muscles are easily fatigued. Now, this sounds really interesting and important to kind of note. Those essential fatty acids are an important part of our repair. So if you find that you work out and you're just not getting the recovery, it could actually be from low essential fatty acids. Dry, flaky skin or dandruff, that can also be a sign of essential fatty acids. So where are these? And I kind of I just put them in so here's your omega-3, 6, and the 9, which we don't talk about a whole lot. And here's where we're looking at the oils. These are the polyunsaturated. We don't want to have canola oil, but they are in canola oil. But they're not a good source, not a healthy source. So fatty fish, fish oils, algae oils, and the omega-6. So some of these oils right here are not ones that I would condone as for consumption, but you can see like evening primrose oil, that's fine. Borage oil, blackcurrant seed oil for the GLA. If you chose to do the sunflower oil and it was from a sunflower seed and you were doing it cold, that would be fine. And meat and poultry, eggs, olive oil and grapeseed oil. Again, wouldn't choose grapeseed oil, but olive oil is fine. So as a summary, we need to eat a balanced diet of all three types of fats: saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated. And we want to choose from safe sources of fat. So from whole foods, not man-made. So not a canola oil. We don't want to choose those fats from the list that are ones to be avoided. And just as a reminder, fat does not make you fat, and it informs your cell communication. It has so many roles that it does. And honestly, the things that are causing us to keep the weight on is the inflammation. So if we choose healthy fats, we're going to lower inflammation in our body, and we're going to stop over consuming sugar, and that's going to help us with balancing our weight. So I hope this was informative to you. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to next time.